Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming along to tonight's meeting of the Planning Applications Committee. Just before I go into the agenda, could I ask people just to be respectful and stand for a minute's silence to remember those that have been involved in the tragedy in Manchester last night? Okay, thank you. You'd like to sit down.
That's fine. Being over the glasses on is Katie. She's just going to observe for half an hour, just so you know she is. Planning officer.
Okay, thank you. And can I also give a welcome to Katie, who's here to observe. You're a planning trainee, yes?
She's going on the masters soon.
Right, okay. Item number 1 is the evacuation procedure. We're not aware of any testing of the fire alarms this afternoon, so if they do go off, we'll treat it for real. And if we can exit through where you'll see the fire exit signs, go down the front steps and we'll meet across at the Yorkshire Bank. If anybody needs any assistance in getting out, give us a shout. We'll make sure that assistance is given. It's also a timely reminder for people to switch your phones off or put them on silent, please. And also to inform people in the room that these meetings are all recorded now and are put out normally on the following day on YouTube. Okay, thank you. Item number 2 is to receive apologies for absence. I've had apologies for Councillor Bonner, who's intended to come but who may be late.
Councillor London and I think Councillor Pomfret.
Okay, thank you. Item number 3 is to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of April. Are you happy that I sign those as a true and correct record? No? Yeah? Thank you. Item number 4 is to receive declarations of pecuniary and other interest in accordance with the Members' Code of Conduct. We already have the ones listed, other than that's been listed.
Just to say, Chair, we have also the addendum with additional declarations that have arisen as a result of the change in membership of the committee.
Okay, thank you. Item number 5 are declarations of contact. I'm aware that I think all members of the committee, I'm not sure about them, and I apologise, Councillor Smith, I should have done a personal welcome to you onto the committee as well. I sincerely hope you enjoy your time on the committee. I'm aware, I think that all members of the committee have received some letters of comment and some photographs by email. Okay, and you're aware of those I haven't got them in
It
front
was,
of me.
it was in connection with item 1. We received them at lunchtime today.
Yeah, it was item 1. So that takes us on to applications on which the public have indicated a desire to speak. If I just run through that process for those of you that haven't been here before. When it comes to that particular item, the officer will present the report. Following on from that, I should take the names from the list of speakers I have in front of me. For members' information, on item number 1, the first speaker no longer wishes to speak. But I believe he's here. But, so we'll take the people that will speak. Under the Constitution, you're allowed 3 minutes to do your presentation. When the egg timer goes off after 3 minutes, I will stop you. That's just so that we're fair to everybody. They get that exact amount of time. However, members of the committee may want to seek any points of clarification. It can only be to clarify anything that's been said during your presentation.
No.
How's that? Yeah, that seems pretty good. Where was I? Lost me track now. Yeah, there'll only be points that clarify from anything that you have said in your presentation. Again, following on that, from that, if the officer feels they've got anything else to say, they'll do so, and then it will be open to the committee to debate the matter once it's been moved and seconded. That'll allow debate to take place. And normally the committee will make a decision today. Most occasions we do. Sometimes we do defer items for more information or for site visits, etc. Okay, then, so that takes us on to item number 1, which is the land to the rear of Plough Hill Road, Nuneaton. Darren, thank you.
Chair. This application is for the erection of 260 dwellings following the approval of reserved matters relating to appearance, landscape, layout and scale of the already approved outline application at Hill Farm, the rear of Plough Hill Road. There have been 41 letters of objection from 32 addresses, as well as 2 anonymous letters. The objections are summarised in the report. The key issues relating to this application are the principle of residential development, housing need and mix, residential amenity, impact on residential amenity, the impact on visual amenity, the impact on highway safety, flooding, impact on ecology and biodiversity, and provision of planning applications. The principle of the development was already established as part of the outline application, so I'll just move on to the other issues. The housing mix will include a provision of 25% of affordable houses, and these will be pepper potted throughout the site. Unfortunately, the plan is not so clear, but the affordable housing sites are etched in blue, down where the cursor is over here, so they're scattered throughout the site. The impact on residential amenity. Properties in Marlow Close, Chesterton Drive, Blake Close, Browning Close, Ruskin Close and Swinburne Close are joined sites which are all to the south, and these properties all meet the distance standards distance standards, including window-to-window distances, overlooking private amenity space and facing blank walls, as set out in accordance with the Council's residential design guide. Within the application site itself, there have been some shortfalls regarding window separation distances. However, these are across the public highways where there is greater flexibility in the distance standards. Another concern related to properties that initially had detached garage on both sides of the housing, which created a sense of enclosure. However, these have been overcome by removing the detached garages on a number of plots. Where garages remain on both sides of the boundaries, the height of the eaves is not much higher than the boundary walls. Thereby, it is considered that there is no significant impact from this. Impact on visual amenity. The development provides good provision of open space, which are to the north and northwest of the residential areas, and also open space corridors. The cursor over here is where the open space areas are, and down over here. The Council has used its landscape consultants and followed several recommendations which have been integrated into the development. For instance, the report recommended that the heights of the proposed dwellings do not exceed those of the existing development to the south. This has been achieved by following the recommendation of a 2-storey maximum height limit. Furthermore, materials will also be of a similar nature to those of the existing nearby properties, using red-brown bricks, brown and grey tiles, and incorporating pitched roofs, bay windows, canopies and stone cells, all adding a variety of interest to the development. Consequently, the development maintains existing characteristics in relation to the surrounding properties, which make the proposal acceptable in visual amenity and design. Highway safety. The proposed design of the development identifies a clear road hierarchy and a main distributor road with footways and small-scale roads, private drives and cul-de-sacs, as well as providing adequate car parking spaces. Furthermore, Warwickshire County Highways were also consulted and raised no objections to the proposal. Flooding and drainage. Flooding was dealt with under the outline application. The site drainage will include attenuation basin in the north-east corner of the site. Additionally, Warwickshire County Land and Drainage Team have raised no objections, provided that further details of the drainage scheme are to be submitted. And this was set out in the conditions which were in the report. Ecology and biodiversity. The proposal site is close by several local wildlife sites and designated areas of wildlife provision, including Ensors Pool, which is a European designated site, a triple SI and a local nature reserve. Adjacent to the site is the Shuntings local wildlife site, and also there's a wooded stream which has a potential local wildlife site. It is proposed that there will be a 15-metre buffer zone along these adjoining sites. Unfortunately, some biodiversity will be lost. However, the council's parks and countryside officers have agreed that this can be mitigated for on-site and off-site habitat provision, which the applicant has agreed to provide. The applicant will also provide planning obligations, initially from which are outstanding from the outline permission, including affordable housing, plain open space, financial contributions to the Shuntings, Nuneaton Common, education, as well as other contributions. The only other obligation that has arisen as part of this application relates to biodiversity offsetting, the final amount of which to be payable is still being negotiated. It is recommended to Planning Applications Committee to grant permission subject to supplementary deed to the original legal agreement and conditions printed in the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Darren. Thank you. If I could ask our first speaker, Mr. Onions, please.
As you've heard, this proposal builds upon key factors agreed by the Council outline stage. This includes the principle of development, but also the development framework plan and the design and access statement submitted at outline, together with the recently approved phasing plan. And as the committee report has highlighted, the reserved matters before you this evening is consistent with these key documents and accords with the outline permission. It will provide for a mix of 1, 2, 3 and 4 bedroom homes. It includes 65 affordable homes split between rented and shared ownership, and it also includes bungalows. As the committee report and the presentation has acknowledged, the proposal will meet all of the council's separation distances between the new housing in the application and existing and adjoining residential development in Galley Common. Heights of the dwellings are all single or two-storey to reflect adjacent development, and their design also utilises features found in the surrounding area, including pitch roofs, brick arches, bay windows, canopies and stone sills. And we've actively pursued a design approach which incorporated those elements. Parking provision is based on 2 spaces per dwelling, with the majority all within the curtilage of the houses, and this development will also deliver a separate car park on the western part of the site to serve Galley Common Infant School. As you've heard, the Highway Authority have no objections. The reserved matters will deliver new areas of public open space, including a play area, a multi-use games area and outside gym equipment. The majority of the new open space is situated in the centre of the site, but there are other open space corridors and landscape buffers alongside the Shuntings wildlife site, along tree corridors and adjacent to the stream on the northern boundary. The reserved matters will provide an attractive addition to Galley Common, and in particular the implementation of the development will trigger a raft of improvements, including a new crossing on Plough Hill Road, improvements to Plough Hill Road itself and new bus service provision. It would also deliver new open spaces and recreation facilities available not only to the new occupiers of the houses but also to existing residents. The site design provides excellent connectivity for pedestrians and cyclists through new and improved pedestrian and cycle routes, so as to integrate the scheme with the surrounding area, and consequently it will provide a sustainable and attractive new development, and I would commend it to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any points of clarification? Yep, Councillor Bennett.
It is, please.
Is a cross to provide a crossing of the road. A pedestrian cross where you press a button, traffic lights come on.
It is traffic lights.
You watch for the green man as was and cross the road.
Anything else, Darren, at this point? No? Okay then, in that case, to enable debate to take place, can I move the recommendation, which is to grant planning permission subject to the supplementary deed to the original legal agreement and the conditions? Is that seconded? Yes, thank you. Any member? No? Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we're a bit concerned about the accessibility. The agent talks about sustainability and about new bus service provisions. How can we actually ensure that new bus service provisions will be provided at this stage by a housing developer?
Let's be clear. We've gone through the points of clarifications. Your comments need to be addressed to the officers now, Councillor Bonham.
Okay, now I'll make a note there, please, then, about, we talked about the height of the eaves of these houses, not much more than the boundary walls. Well, that makes me think that there's either some very high boundary walls going to go in, or some very low houses. How is this been achieved, please?
The height of the eaves are approximately 2.3 metres, which is just slightly higher than the boundary walls.
The eaves that Darren was referring to being slightly higher than the boundary walls related to the garages, not the houses themselves. Okay.
Right, yeah, okay, that figures. Is any other member? No? If not, the recommendation is the one that is printed in front of you and been moved and seconded, is to grant planning permission. All those in favour of that? And against? And abstentions? Okay, that's approved. Thank you. That takes us on to item number 2 then, which is the site at Bucks Hill, Nuneaton.
This proposal is for a 20-bed development with emphasis on specialist care, offered offered 24-hour round-the-clock supervision for men and women with mental illness. The proposal is for a two-storey development with specific emphasis with specialist care, 24 hours, 7 days a week, for 20 patients who have their own ensuite bedroom and share communal facilities such as kitchen and lounge. Residents will be between the age of 18 to 65 and will only be accepted following a comprehensive assessment by Camino Healthcare's nursing team. The site is located within the urban area of Galley Common, adjacent to Camp Hill. To the rear of what is predominantly a residential area, a small section of the application site, however, is part of the countryside policy EMV3. To the north of the site are rear gardens to properties on Westminster Drive, and to the east are the rear gardens to properties on Bucks Hill. Whilst to the south, the access of Bucks Hill, there is a local wildlife site referred to as Nuneaton Common. The application site was previously owned by the council and historically occupied lock-up garages, a builder's yard and a lorry repair site and habitable caravans. The site was cleared by the council in the late 1990s. However, the site has since become overgrown with vegetation and is an untidy site and has remnants of rubble. The site is also considered vacant. There is evidence that the site is being used as a dump, as there are sofas and other thrown-away household items clearly visible. The key issues related to this development are related to the principle of development, housing need and land supply, sustainable development, impacts on residential amenity, impacts on visual amenity and design, the impact on biodiversity and local wildlife sites, flood risk and land drainage, contaminated land, air quality, noise, impact on highway safety, and provision of planning obligations. The council are aware of the housing supply and need within the borough. And this site will provide a welcome addition of a type of affordable housing needed in the borough. The principle of development itself has been established through previous applications, which are stated in the report. There have been 5 letters of objection from 5 addresses and a further petition with 4 sign-ins. Again, the objections are summarised in the report. The site is a previously developed site, and such recycling of land is a core planning principle. The proposal will also create other sustainability factors, including using urban brownfield within the existing urban area, the site being close to shops, bus stops and other services. The site has a very limited ecological value, is within flood zone 1, and will create full and part-time jobs for local people, including management, technical and administrative, nursing and catering roles. The site is also less susceptible to surface water flooding. It is noticeable on site that the properties on Bucks Hill and Westminster Drive are set on higher ground, so the occupants will not be overlooked, especially as the care home is well set back from the rear gardens by as much as 35 metres and as close to 26 metres. Furthermore, at the north end of the care home, where the distance is reduced, there will be no habitable rooms overlooking the rear of the properties on Westminster Drive. Consequently, it's considered that the layout will respect residential amenity in terms of overlooking sensible enclosure and protect daylight and sunlight and accord with the separation distances set out in the Council's residential design guide. The photographs here show the site as it is now, and with the housing on Bucks Hill here considerably higher up than the ground level of the application site. It is considered that the proposal respects the prevailing character of the area by setting the development at 2 stories and predominantly uses red brick. The layout also incorporates an existing covenant requiring a 7-metre biodiversity zone to the southern and eastern boundaries. This zone will also function as a focal point towards Nuneaton Common local wildlife sites beyond the southern and eastern boundaries. The development proposal will also contribute to a sense of place and create visual interest through good design, mix of materials, varying projections and quality open spaces and landscaping accessible to the residents. Along the boundary here is the 7-metre ecological buffer zone, which has access points down to Nuneaton Common. There is considerable landscaping as well within the site. The development incorporates a significant biodiversity and landscape improvements. Furthermore, the applicant will also provide 0.41 biodiversity offsetting units leading to the creation and maintenance of 700 square metres of semi-improved neutral grassland at Whittleford Park. It is proposed that the council will manage this habitat for 30 years using herbicide cultivating and wildlife seeding. Under the conditions of biodiversity offsetting, this will more than satisfactorily offset the impact of the development. The applicant's flood risk assessment identifies the most suitable way to manage surface runoff is to use a sustainable urban drainage system that combines a permeable pavement, rainwater harvesting and bioretention with no infiltration. Severn Trent Water have responded to the consultation with no objection, subject to development meeting conditions set out in the report. The applicant provided no site investigation strategy in relation to contamination. However, information from the Council's Geographic Information System shows that the application site is not contaminated. However, the Environmental Health Officers have recommended a contaminated land condition be attached to, if approved, the decision notice. Environmental Health were also concerned about excessive noise from the care home that could impact on the amenity of the occupants living nearby. They've also requested that a condition be attached relating to fencing along some of the properties along Bucks Hill to attenuate any noise coming from the proposal. Access to the sites is between 221 and 223 Bucks Hill Road. The proposal will create 14 car parking spaces and 8 cycle spaces on the site. Warwickshire County Council were consulted and raised no objections, provided the development meets the conditions they have provided, which are also set out in the report. The access point is down here. You can see the cursor. The lines over here show the visibility displays are adequate according to the County Council. The applicant has agreed to pay £10,272 towards plain open space at Whittleford Park and also a further £4,944 for biodiversity offsetting at Whittleford Park as well. It is therefore recommended that Planning Applications Committee approve the application.
Okay, thanks, Darren. If I could ask Ms. Dove. Yep. It's the big button on there.
Good afternoon, members. My name is Catherine Dove and I'm the planning agent representing Camino Healthcare. Camino Healthcare provides rehabilitative care within purpose-built, high-quality residential care homes for individuals diagnosed with enduring mental health problems. Residents coming into my clients' homes will have typically been in poor-quality, converted residential units or in hospital, often causing bed blocking due to a lack of teams allow individuals to receive training, therapy and reskilling to help improve their quality of life with the aim of full reintegration into society. Residents will only be accepted following a comprehensive assessment by my client's nursing team and will be supported by members of staff at all times. Camino Healthcare is an established provider within the local area and have 2 existing homes in the West Midlands, in West Bromwich and in Dudley. My client is committed to delivery of this exciting scheme, which will provide a number of significant planning benefits. Firstly, it will provide a vitally needed care service in an area of identified need and will minimise the extent to which local people are placed outside of the area due to a shortage of provision. The site is well located for the proposed use in an established residential area with good access to shops and local services. Secondly, it will transform the appearance of a previously developed site which is currently run down and derelict and attracts antisocial behaviour and fly tipping. The scheme is of a high-quality design that respects the prevailing form and character of the area. Thirdly, it will provide approximately 30 jobs for local people, with a maximum of 12 staff on site at any one time. Fourthly, it will contribute towards the council's housing numbers where there is an existing shortfall. And fifthly, it will deliver landscape and biodiversity improvements through the creation of attractive areas of open space for use by residents, an ecological buffer adjacent to the public park, as well as supporting other local enhancements through planning contributions. We have listened to and incorporated the comments received by the local authority, local residents and consultees through the pre-application consultation. The building has been positioned to avoid any material harm in respect of residential amenity, and the distance between the building and existing houses far exceed the council's minimum standards. We have also worked closely with the Highways Authority to ensure that the access arrangements are acceptable, and we note that no highways objection is raised. Level of parking accords with the relevant standards and is appropriate to the use. It reflects the fact that no residents will own cars and that many local staff will use sustainable modes of transport. In summary, this is a highly sustainable development that will fully address the economic, social and environmental objectives set out in the NPPF. We welcome your officer's recommendation to approve the scheme and would commend this application to you. Thank you for your time.
Points of clarification. Councillor Tromans.
Said is several times is communal healthcare. I can't find anything for them on Google. Who are they?
Camino Healthcare. And they run CAMINO. And they run a couple of existing care homes within the West Midlands area, providing care for individuals and adults who have ongoing mental health problems, and there's staff on site all the time to support them.
Okay.
That she said.
Is it continuing on the same thing? Because I'm not sure of the relevance of
No, it was about what she said about training and reskilling. You were talking, so is there going to be some kind of equipment or plant brought in? What kind of training and skilling are we talking about? You know, computer work or actually manufacturing stuff or what? Or bricklaying or what?
Working with individuals who live in the accommodation to support them for sort of independent living so that they can go out into the community and be able to sort of support themselves. So it's about giving them the skills to be able to live independently.
Life skills, I think, is what.
No, you know, you talked about people with enduring mental health problems. Obviously, you're not talking about people that are sectioned or people that are being incarcerated. Is there any plans implied for you to change the use of that by the applicant? No.
Any plans to change that? We're not looking to include people who have been sort of sectioned as such. It's going to be just for supporting individuals on an ongoing basis.
Okay, thank you. I'll anyway, if that was the case. Claire's nodding, so. Are there any other points of clarification? Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was mentioned that previous applications should be considered. I just wondered what previous applications...
Can you... Sorry.
I mean, I think I'm quite in favour of this at the moment, but I just wondered what previous applications have we received along a similar line.
Yes, there were...
Well,
sorry.
I'll let you answer it when we come back to the committee part of it.
Okay.
This is points of clarification to the speaker.
Okay,
Okay, I recognise you've been missing for 12 months, so... Well, not missing, but not on this committee. Okay. Are there any other points of clarification to the speaker? No? Okay, thank you. Is there anything you need to come back on at the moment, Darren?
No.
Okay then, thank you. I'll bring you in a moment. So, I haven't missed anybody. To enable debate to take place, can I move the recommendation? Is that seconded? Thank you. Any member? Councillor Bonner, if you want to put that again in case we've missed it.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've got a couple of items I'm just not sure about.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Bonner, can you put your button on it? Otherwise...
previous applications we should consider in light of this one, wonder what they might be.
There have been several applications for small-scale residential development.
And did we approve them?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. susceptible to flooding, less susceptible to what? And I'm not sure to understand what no infiltration to a drainage system, what that actually means, please.
Its natural drainage permeates through the ground. The type of system that they're going to be using is a sustainable urban drainage system, which will flow through pipes into the nearby river.
Less sustainable, less susceptible to flooding. I'm not sure what that actually meant.
Well, it's within flood zone 1. Flood zone, sorry, Councillor. Flood zone 1 is the least. There's flood zones 1, 2, and 3. 3 being most susceptible for flooding, 1 being less.
So 1 is the lowest risk area. Councillor Copeland.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Bob. Councillor Copeland, we're all still trying to get used to this after about 2 years, but if we can remember to press the button, otherwise things don't work.
At the last meeting, I thought I had it cracked. I should have known better. Can I just ask a question? Because we have here some neighbour responses written down, and they're obviously proceeds from letters. The bits I would like some clarification on is it says here from the neighbours that this application is not suitable for residents with mental illness. Residents of the care home will climb over the rear of properties, etc. Patients will be a threat to residents. When I'm looking at planning applications, I deal with evidence. Is there anything in the letters more in the letters that I need to know where there's evidence that backs up these statements, or are these just opinions?
Councillor, it appears that they're mainly opinions.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I do understand why Councillor Copeland asked that questions, because we have had it in the past where there's been some pretty bad opinions expressed in the types of use of some things, and indeed they become actually a really valued part of the community, and you know where I'm talking about, Councillor Copeland. Councillor Tromans.
Some very thoughtful conditions indeed on here, including the acoustic fence that's got to be erected prior to any works being done, a whole schedule that's got to be agreed with the council beforehand. There seems to have been an awful lot of work that's gone into that to mitigate impact on the local community. I've read it in detail, heard what's been said. The application I'm minded to vote in favour of, but I do have some concerns about the restrictions, and officers can guide us on this. For what category of planning will they be granted? What other uses could they use under that category of plan? Could this escalate into being a secure unit, not for people with maybe mental conditions, but troubled youngsters or bail hostels or whatever? What other uses could it be put to if we pass this plan as it's proposed now?
The use that this development falls into is a C2 use class, which is defined as a residential institution. As such, it's accommodation which is residential for people in need of care. So that includes residential schools, colleges, training centres, hospitals, nursing homes. So that there is a permitted change in the old use classes order. I don't know whether that is carried forward to the new one, because there is a new one that's been brought in today, to allow a change of use to a state-funded school or registered nursery. So there is not really any different to the use that is currently permitted. Secure residential institutions are a different use class, and there is no permitted change between C2 and the secure residential institution, which is C2A.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Claire. Any other member? No? In that case, the recommendation is as printed, which is to grant planning permission subject to a legal agreement and the conditions printed. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. That's approved. Which then takes us on to item number 3, the site at Prologis, Ash Green.
This development is for the erection of 2 units in either B1 business or B8 storage and distribution. One of the units is proposed that it can have a flexible use and be subdivided into 3 units. The proposal also includes access and parking and service areas. All the units are to front into the site, with units 2 and 4 being closest to the proposed vehicle access. This unit is closest also to residential properties with a minimum distance of 36 metres. It is this unit that is proposed to be more of a flexible use that can either be 1 unit or divided into 3 separate units, smaller units. Unit 1 is a single unit and has a height of 8 metres, being slightly higher than the units 2 to 4. This unit is positioned into the corner of Pilgrim's Walk and Central Boulevard. The units will have 1 roller shutter door and glazing to the front. And the units are proposed to be finished in a composite cladding with striped detailing to the front. Here's the front of the units here, with glazed frontage and striped cladding here. The key issues relating to this application: the principle of development, impact to residential properties, the design, highway safety and parking, flooding and drainage, and ecology. The principle of development is justified under Save Policy EMP1 of the local plan, which designates Prologis as a B1, B2 and B8 use for employment. The separation distance regarding window-to-window distances, overlooking, sense of enclosure, loss of light are all met in accordance with the residential design guide. Environmental health officers, however, are concerned with the potential for light spill and noise nuisance. Consequently, a condition has been imposed to ensure that these are mitigated. This was set out in the report. The units are considered to be of a high design in relation to its industrial context. The elevations are coloured grey and will match the majority of units within the Prologis Park. The detailing of both vertical and horizontal and the colour of the cladding and fenestration will break up the frontages of the buildings and provide some fine detailing. The size and the ridge height of the units provide a balance between the houses and the much larger units already within the Prologis Park. County highways have no objection and do not require any conditions. The site provides 42 spaces plus 2 spaces disabled spaces and is therefore considered that the development complies with highway safety and parking. The proposal is within flood zone 1, least susceptible to flooding, and the county have raised no objection subject to conditions to ensure that the site will drain acceptably and requiring maintenance programme and for the site. This is also, the conditions are also set out to mitigate this. The site has become fairly overgrown and does provide some ecological value. The Council's Parks and Countryside team, however, have raised no objection, providing that the site is cleared to ecological best practice and the area providing the greatest biodiversity to be retained and protected during construction. Since the principle of development is acceptable and the impact of the neighbouring residential properties and ecology can be protected via suitable conditions, it is recommended to committee that the application be granted.
Okay, thank you, Darren. Ian Dunkley.
Rogers Park in Coventry has been established for over 10 years and is one of the premier distribution parks within the borough with over 1.5 million square feet. Our small 1.3 acre, 15,500 square foot proposed industrial development is one of the final plots within Prologis Park and represents approximately 1% of the total estate area. This site has been marketed as an office development for a number of years but has had no occupier interest. The original proposal for a 3-storey office building, which would be taller than our proposed units and would also generate significantly more traffic. Tungsten have worked hard with the case officer to reach a scheme that is acceptable. The site is constrained due to a large drainage easement that runs across the northern section of the site, which has led to the layout which is proposed. We have accepted restricted hours of use for the 3 small units facing the residential properties to appease the residents. Our scheme is considerably smaller in terms of height and scale compared to the 12.5 metre high, 100,000 square foot distribution warehouses that dominate Prologis Park, which operate 24/7. Unit 1 has been pre-sold to a local company within Nuneaton, securing 15 jobs within the borough, and we have strong interest in the remaining 3 small units, which will also create additional jobs and business rates. Tungsten Properties pride themselves on delivering high-quality, well-designed industrial units that meet occupier demand. From our experience of developing similar schemes in Nuneaton, Kettering and Hinckley, small units are serviced mainly by vans and 7.5-tonne lorries, which don't generate the noise of articulated lorries. All the sectional overhead doors are electric and are quiet whilst in operation, as opposed to people's perception of the old-fashioned noisy roller shutter doors. In conclusion, Tungsten are proposing employment use within an employment site, generating jobs within a pleasant landscaped environment. Thank you.
Okay. No? Anything to come back on at this stage, Darren? No? Okay then, in that case, to enable debate to take place, can I move the recommendation as printed, which is to grant planning permission? That's seconded. Okay then. Any member? No? In that case, it's been moved and seconded the recommendation in front of us to grant planning permission subject to the conditions printed. All those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. That's approved. Which takes us on to item number 4, Bellway Phase 2, land off the Long Shoot, Nuneaton.
This application is for a variation of condition number 20 of previously approved application 034036. The application refers to phase 2 of Bellway's housing development along the Longshoot. The residential development for phase 2 was approved on 21st of March 2016 and has now commenced. Phase 2 will share the same access as for phase 1, which is now largely completed. However, the approval for phase 2 included a condition stating that the access was to be upgraded to include traffic lights before development of phase 2 commenced. Condition 20 was at the request of the Highway Authority to provide a suitable access early in the development. The change in wording now relates to the change of wording relates to no development occurring until the access has been constructed in the original application. A further application for a variation, then changed it to no development shall be occupied until the access has been constructed. And now to this application where it states that no more than 30 dwellings shall be occupied until the access has been constructed. The key issues relate to impact on residential amenity and the impact on highway safety. The impact of the junction alterations upon neighbouring properties was first assessed as part of the original full application. A further assessment has also been carried out and is in accordance with the Council's residential design guide. Although it's accepted that the altering this condition to allow the occupation of 30 dwellings will delay the widening of the highway and installation of the traffic lights as part of the Section 278 works, it's considered that it will not result in any significant impact upon the residential amenity of the surrounding properties. Sorry about that. There have been delays carrying out the works to the access of this site. However, in a recent letter to the Highway Authority stated that the procurement process has taken longer than originally anticipated in their initial discussions with Bellway Homes. The Highways Authority have had to change the engineer dealing with this scheme on 2 occasions, and their resources have been stretched. Due to other highway works being undertaken in this part of Nuneaton, it is now unlikely that the highway widening and the installation of traffic lights are likely to commence on the access of this site until later this year. Furthermore, the Highway Authority's most recent response states that the harm caused by the further delay of the works until the occupation of 30 dwellings would not cause any significant detriment. It is considered that given the Highway's comments, the variation of this condition will allow Bellway to sell and occupy more houses while the works carries on to the Section 278 works. It is therefore recommended to Planning Applications Committee to grant permission subject to the agreement of a deed of variation.
Okay, thank you, Darren. Councillor Condacole.
It's been going on an awful long while. It's not just about building the 30 houses and whether you get this. This is 127 houses that have already been built as part of Bellway Phase 1. That was an application in 2012 and outlined in 2013. So this has been going on for 5 years, this Bellway development. And we keep getting this access put back. The access for Phase 1 was never implemented. So there is not a safe ghost junction going in and out of Phase 1, 127 homes. This is the third time this access has been back to planning to be changed. It is absolutely appalling that it keeps getting put back. The new developments that are coming on stream, they're building the access roads before they start development. If you look at what's happening on the Wenton Road, sites should have proper access fairly early on. And we've already had one accident last year from at the access here. And it's unacceptable people going along the long shoot that there isn't actually a safe junction, because obviously people are dicing with death coming out. And it's unacceptable to people living on the development that they can't get out safely. There's also the issue of cycle lanes and cycle provision, because in addition to actually not providing the traffic lights to get safely out the site, Bellway have not provided the cycle lane in phase 1, i.e. what should have been provided years ago, out of the back of the site into St Nicholas Park. So they're continuously delaying and having an excuse. It obviously saves them an absolute fortune to keep not providing this access, and every time they've got an excuse. But any sensible developer would have put the access works right at the beginning of the project. And say this is the second phase. Phase 1 has taken the last 3 years to build. Its access was effectively scrapped instead of the phase 2 access. And I say we've got massive issues on the long shoot. Anyone who drives up there knows how horrendously busy it is. And we've got no access to this site and no proper access to the Davidson site higher up. So it's 2 sites, no cycle lanes anywhere, no ghost junctions. Absolutely nothing's been done apart from selling homes. And this is not acceptable. Developers should put in the infrastructure early on at a reasonable phase in the process and not be 5 years on. And I mean, 30 houses, it could be another year before we get this access. Thank you, Chair.
Condicorn. Are there any points of clarification? No. I've got one, but it's not to Councillor Condicorn. Anything at this point, Darren? Okay, in that case, to enable debate to take place, can I move the recommendation, which is to grant planning permission subject to a deed of variation? Is that seconded?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, can I just put it, just to clarify something, in regards to the construction and infrastructure of the roads and that, is that contribution not held by the County Council for that purpose?
I don't know the detail of the 106 agreement in its full detail, but as I understand it, the delay for this is mostly due to the County Council not being able to do what they need to do as part of their own works under Section 278 of the Highways Act.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know whether there is a legal agreement in relation to highways works, but it's part of the planning application.
Okay, thank you. It's maybe an issue then that a county councillor may want to raise at the county council. I'm sorry, I saw it. Councillor Tromans.
This has indeed come back to us before, and maybe the developer should consider that had they kept to the original agreement, they wouldn't need to rely on county councils and other people having offices available to do all the necessary background stuff for them. This is very disappointing. Bellway weren't particularly good neighbours when they first started the development, but to their credit, they did deal with some of the issues of unwarranted noise and activity outside time and all sorts of other nuisances that they caused. They dealt with that, and I have found that on the ground, the site managers and management there and the surveyors have been very reasonable and have done a lot to mitigate problems that have been raised by local residents, including the residents on the new estates. And the residents on the new estate are very unhappy at not being able to get in and out safely of their developments. And as has been pointed out, some of them have lived there for several years now, and it's still not happened. I think this is a question of pure economics, and the bean counters at Bellway are just saying, you know what, the longer we can keep kicking this can down the road, the better. And I am certainly, not prepared to agree to set a precedent where developers can keep coming back to this committee and asking for further extensions, further delays, and renegotiating the terms of planning approvals that have already been granted. So I certainly won't be voting in favour of this. I'm disappointed that higher up at Bellway they've seen fit to push it out again. They should have kept to their original conditions. The junction would be done by now, and they wouldn't be relying on anyone else or making excuses about county highways. Thank you.
I would like to respond to comments that you've made in relation to the developers withholding money.
Yes, Chair, I think we've got to make this absolutely clear. The developers entered into a planning obligation with this council, which necessitated the payment of monies to the county council. As I understand it, those monies have been paid and are being held by the county council. It is in connection with the county council's ability to deliver under its separate Section 278 agreement that is delaying the delivery of the road improvements. It is not Bellway that have delayed that.
Actually, I'm not disputing what the current situation is. I'm saying if Bellway hadn't have come to us and already had the date pushed back once, if they'd done the work or had agreed to have the works done as they were originally approved some considerable time ago, we wouldn't now be in this situation. And so, that was the point I was making.
Okay, now to vary the deed. Sorry, did I see somebody else indicate? No. In that case, Darren, unless you've got anything else to come back on? No? Okay then, it's been moved and seconded that we grant planning permission subject to a deed of variation. All those in favour of that? And against?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's lost, Chair.
That is not approved. I know the process. I'll try and help members. I have tried to help on a number of occasions before. The recommendation hasn't been approved. There needs to be something else moved and seconded.
With reasons, Chair.
The original planning permission stands, and that Bellway don't have any properties actually occupied until the works are done. That's what the current planning position is, so I move that just remains in force.
Why?
Because that's what they originally agreed to, and that was already an extension on the original one.
I'm sorry, let me be clear. We need proper planning reasons for any recommendation that's being put forward.
No, I think, Chair, it's for proper planning officers to come up with the reasons.
Sorry, Councillor, you've been on the planning committee against an officer recommendation. You need to justify that and put forward your reasons for moving what you've moved.
The residents cannot get out, access in and out in a timely manner. It's causing a danger to traffic and highway. But, Chair, the alternative is you're telling us we either agree with every officer recommendation or we agree with every officer recommendation. It's not for me to be a planning expert and a legal expert to frame the language to reject it.
Right. Otherwise, there'd be no point of having this committee. You're well aware, through all the training that we have gone through and members have to have, if you oppose an officer's recommendation, you have to have the proper planning reasons to put forward something else. The only thing I've heard so far is highway safety. Yes?
Yes.
Thank you. It's been moved, refusal of the application on the grounds of highway safety. Is that seconded?
I'll second that.
Yeah, I've got it. Yeah. bear with me, please. We need to get these things right. Councillor Copeland.
Thank you,
Can you press your button, Councillor Copeland?
As I said when I spoke earlier today on a different item, the word I use, and I use it often at this committee, I am here to make decisions based on evidence that is before me. Now, there can be evidence from wherever, so long as it's evidence that I can, say, oh, that's another word, that it's sound evidence. So, for me to vote for what has now been proposed, I need sound evidence that there is a danger there and there is what's factually been said. In actual fact, I did, with respect, hear from the Speaker that there had been an accident. Now, I have no evidence of that. That's what had been said. There was an accident at that junction. But we have nothing before us about that. Now, until I have something before me telling me, the evidence of that, then I cannot go along. Well, okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Bonner.
They will communicate to the County Council highways. I seem to remember the accident, as we was reported in the press. There was a car upside down. So the emergency services were definitely there, but I'm just questioning whether County Council highways measure these statistics or even knowledgeable of them. And I know some of my knowledge of the way the emergency services work, they don't actually communicate with each other within their own organisation. So it could be possible that the County Council don't know of this one collision was quite a nasty job. So it definitely happened. We haven't got any journalists here today, but it was reported in the press. And as I say, we do recall it because one car was upside down. I think it involved 3 vehicles. Yeah. But as to evidence that we have available to us today to use, it's debatable, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things there. The accident was, whether it be related to this or not. And secondly, members of this committee, and I will advise them again, and the officers would have done the same, we have no objections from the county highways people. So I have to say that because you have to bear that in mind just in case of any hearing inquiry implications. Councillor Ian Lloyd.
Latter point, Highways Authority, no objections from the Highways Authority. Yet we're hearing that we're putting forward a recommendation that we refuse it on highway grounds. I can't support that. I've got nobody's put any evidence in front of me. I hear about the accident. There's accidents on all roads, whether it is to do with this particular junction or what's going on in that particular area with the building work is debatable. But that should have been reported to the County Council, and the County Council would have took that into consideration. If there was a highway issue there, the county highway authorities would have responded so. There isn't. That gives me concern.
Did you indicate? Sorry. I'm sorry, Councillor Grant, I didn't see you indicate. I saw Councillor Troman's put his hand up again, but...
Both did it exactly the same time.
Councillor...
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, can you just give me a minute?
Okay.
Councillor Tromans, I'm chairing the meeting. I'll cover the member. Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Chair. Surely, by rejecting this planning permission, what we are in fact doing is upholding the original planning permission, which was granted by the members of the planning committee. So, therefore, there must have been grounds for the original to be put forward, and just by rejecting this, in practice, that means it's as if it was never put forward in the first place. So, we just stick by what we originally decided several years ago.
Again, can I be clear? I'm sorry if members have to understand. We are not reconsidering a previous application. We're considering the application in front of us. If you refuse it, it's refused. And we're where we are. I saw some hands go up. I'm just waiting to see. Is there anybody wishing to speak that hasn't already spoken? Councillor Bonner.
In the words should and would, but perhaps Warwickshire County Council's highways are too busy somewhere else to deal with this. Well, it's, they're too busy. They've got other things to do, so they haven't. So they're willing to.
Councillor Bonner, I'm sorry, I'm going to stop you.
Okay.
We haven't got an officer from the County Council here to respond to attend our meetings, but nevertheless, I'll do a further reminder. We are dealing with the application in front of us. If members can focus their minds on that, please. If people want to speak, can they put their hands up and indicate that they want to speak? Councillor Tromans.
Approval history is a relevant consideration with a current application. The point that Councillor Gran made continues. There's more to it than that. The point is that they asked for an extension for it to be pushed out the date for this junction to have to be done. It wasn't accepted. There was a negotiation and it was reined in on the grounds of safety, I seem to recall at the time. And so it was set at the point in the development, which was, it wasn't as it was originally approved. They did ask for an extension. That wasn't fully agreed to on the grounds of safety. There was a compromise. Now they're coming back for no other reason than commercial reasons. If they are saying that highways are delaying and whatever, that's fine. But the issue doesn't change the safety aspect of it. If that was the furthest date that could reasonably be agreed before on the grounds of safety, why on earth, just because that builder now can't get highways to pull their finger out, does that override safety? I think that's the point. We don't need to have a crystal ball to know what accidents will be there. We know that that was as far as the Planning Committee and Highways were prepared to go last time. Nothing of a safety basis has
we
changed.
are not going to continue talking time. We have an application in front of us. Please don't tell me to be careful, Councillor Tromans. I am saying to you from the chair, we have an application here that we're dealing with. Any applicant can bring any application for this council to consider. Reasons for it and nothing to do with us. We have got to deal with the application in front of us. Councillor Copeland.
Chair, I have to back you up in what you've said about that.
Move to the vote.
Did you put that? I've said it just a few minutes ago. I'm chairing the meeting, not you.
I call for the vote. Well, it's up to you whether you agree.
Councillor Tromans, I'm chairing the meeting. You'll speak when I allow you to speak. Councillor Copeland.
The job we have when we're here is we deal with and treat each case, each application on its merits. And that's exactly what we're doing here. I haven't got a problem with it being refused. I haven't got a problem at all. I didn't vote for refusal, but I outvoted. I'm in favour of democracy. The councillor there doesn't seem to be because he wanted me not to be heard. But I'm happy that, well, not happy that I'm beat, but I'm beat by the numbers. It's as simple as that. Now then, I need evidence. As I've said before, and I'm sorry, but I'm going to repeat that each time. But the one thing I refuse to believe, or if I have to believe and I'm told it's the truth, then by golly, we got a major problem. I refuse to believe that a car was on its roof on a highway and the county council don't know about that. I refuse to believe that. I know, obviously, fire service, which Ian used to be in, police and whatever, they must have been there. Now, I just refuse to believe that the county council don't know about that. There could well have been other reasons. When a car's on its roof, this is just me now, guessing, I always think that's a bit of a speeding issue. No, I'd be wrong. But a car on its roof, the county know about it. And if they don't, by golly, we're in a mess. Now then, getting back to this, I would like to hear the evidence. And that's why I will not be voting for refusal until I have evidence.
Thank you. Right. Councillor Tony Lloyd, you haven't spoken yet.
Lost of, as I say, democracy in here is you vote accordingly how you feel is correct in what is in front of us. I didn't vote against that because I've sat on here now about 22 or 25 years, and what we always do is when it comes to highways and the very people sitting in here who are making all the noises and the bad things towards you, question the county highways. Have the highways got any objection? I can remember, I've been on here a while, I've watched them all. Ask the questions, has County Council got any objections? And I, like Councillor Copeland, I do not think County Council do not know what happened on their highway up the road when it comes to this. Make no mistake about it, in my view, until somebody comes from there and tell us they don't know, then he's wrong. And I don't believe some of the officers over at County are sitting on their hands and doing nothing, like it's been indicated, which I think that's quite some derogative remarks towards officers in the county. But the highways is county. We have them sitting there and whatever. They have not come forward with this, and they have no objections whatsoever. I have a terrible feeling somebody's playing a political game. And it's wrong. You're playing with people's lives and where they live and everything and that. And some of the remarks to you, Chair, is a disgrace sitting on this committee.
Okay, well,
and we've made a clanger on this one.
I've already asked people to keep to... I'm going to take one final speaker and then I'm going to move to the vote.
We'll need to look at the procedure first, Chair. There is a process that we need to follow before we go to the vote.
Process? We're going through the process.
Where we are voting against an officer recommendation,
yeah,
and the reasons for refusal need to go to the planning officer to confirm whether or not they can be sustained.
Yeah.
If the officer says not, then we have to give the costs warning.
Yeah.
There is then the option of deferring the item to bring back a formal report on it.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that, and I thought I'd kind of touched on that earlier, but maybe I should have done it later on. Councillor Ian Lloyd, and then we're going to move into the process.
Evidence. Can't be said enough times. It's been thrown in my face on numerous occasions in the past, and I've had to put the evidence forward. On highways, county do know. I hold my hand up. Like probably a few people in here have been a bit naughty and done a bit of speeding. I went and had a course down at, I don't know what it's called now, over Ansley Way, and they come up with all the wonderful figures of where the accident black spots are all over the county. They tell you about them. So they're there, they've got the figures, they've got the information. So I can't believe the county are not aware. But no matter whether they're aware or not, in the document in front of us, it says there's no objections from county on highways. I've got no problem voting against it, but on highways I can't. Simple as that, and I won't.
So that we all know what we're doing, it's been moved and seconded that we refuse the application on the grounds of highway safety. At that point, I have to seek the advice of the planning officers if whether that's a defendable reason for refusing it.
Thank you, Chair. On the basis of the County Council's comments with no objection and a subsequent letter that says they believe that the junction is operating acceptably, we would stand very little chance of being able to substantiate that reason for refusal.
Okay,
So, no, we can't use that as a reason for refusal, in my professional opinion. And on that basis, if they did make an appeal, then there is a very high likelihood that we would be awarded costs against us at any appeal.
Thank you. Okay, Philip, you're happy that I proceed to the vote? Members have had that advice.
If I can just reiterate the point from the cost circular, Chair, just to reinforce the point. Yes, thank you, Chair. Just for those particularly new members of the committee, there is a circular on costs. It is Circular 3 of 2009. In Section B of that circular, it explains what is an unreasonable refusal, and it also outlines what is expected of local planning authorities when considering applications and what it would be expected to be able to prove at any subsequent public inquiry. And it says that planning authorities will be expected to produce evidence at appeal stage to substantiate each reason for refusal with any reference to the development plan and all of the material considerations, including relevant judicial authority. It then says, vague, generalised or inaccurate assertions about a proposal's impact, which are unsupported by any objective analysis, are more likely to result in a costs award. Now, the gist of that, and for those old hands here, we've had this before, where we are dealing with a technical issue of highway safety, in the absence of evidence from a technical highway engineer to support that reason, it is highly likely that the council will be considered to have unreasonably refused the application. Now you can take the vote.
Okay, thank you. So that we're clear on that, there's been. Could you tell me what the point of order is in the Constitution, please, Councillor?
Yes, Director Richardson referred to it earlier. He was talking about deferred for a report for, that's the other part of this process, for a further report to be produced. You mentioned that, Director Richardson?
It's lost.
What we can do, Chair, we do have a procedure. If the Chair is minded to do this, and it is at the Chair's discretion, we can defer the item to the next meeting, instruct the planning officers to produce a report to consult with the Highway Authority to see whether or not they can support the reason for refusal. It will then stand as moved and seconded for refusal when it comes back, at which point the committee can consider whether it wishes to consider that or move something else. But it is your discretion, Chair.
I believe we've got enough information and officer advice in front of us tonight. I'm going to move to the vote on what we've got. It's been moved and seconded that we refuse the application on highway safety. All those in favour of that?
4.
And against?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's lost, Chair.
In that case, from the Chair, I will move the original recommendation as...
No, Chair, because we've voted.
Oh, we don't... Okay.
Well, I suggest, Chair, you defer the item to the next meeting. I think that's the only thing you can do now.
I've seen a few people nodding, so okay then. I will move that then, that we defer the item until the next planning meeting. All those... Sorry, I should ask if anybody wants to speak. Councillor Lloyd.
So often, can Philip Richardson just explain the process there? Because what I'm concerned with, I mean, we're deferring it for what? No, we haven't, not yet. Chair.
The committee can have another look at it, and it can move, because it's the next meeting, it can move anything it wants at the next meeting. As you know, Chair, once we've taken a vote on an item, we can't then re-vote on it in accordance with our constitutional principles. So we have to bring it back to the next meeting now.
Okay, all I want to know is will that put this application back and in the red because of the timescales, etc.? What's the timescales on it?
The 8 weeks. Is it actually
It
8
may
weeks?
well do, but we would probably be able to negotiate an extension of time with the applicant, and hopefully that should resolve the situation. But I don't know the exact determination date of this particular application without checking.
Okay, anybody else before I take the vote on that? Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we defer the item and it will come back to the next committee. All those in favour of that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 10 and against?
Abstention.
Abstentions.
That's different.
Right, if we can move on. If we can move on to item number 5 then, please, which is the beaches, Bedworth. Oh, sorry, I should say Claire has had to declare an interest in this matter, hence her leaving the room. Just whenever you're ready, Darren.
Yeah, this application is for a first-storey extension to side and rear with a Juliet balcony to rear. Number 2, the Beaches, is a detached property with an existing single-storey extension to side and rear. There have been 7 letters of objection from 5 addresses, and the application has also been called in at the request of Councillor Sebastian Grant. The key issues in determining this application are the impact on residential amenity and impact on visual amenity. The first floor extension will be visible to number 1, the Beaches. However, it's considered that it will not fringe a 45-degree line to number 1's ground floor kitchen window. With regards to number 3, the Beaches, amended plans have removed the original proposed balcony, and thereby the impact on number 3, the Beaches, has now been removed. The first floor extension and Juliet balcony will be visible to number 29 Silver Birch Avenue. Nonetheless, the extension complies with the council separation distances, and thereby no significant impact is considered. This is number 1, the Beaches, over here, and number 3, the Beaches, is over here. It is considered that the first floor extension to the side will be seen from public views. However, materials and roof design match closely to the original, and therefore the impact of the proposed extension upon visual amenity is considered to be not significant. The recommendation to the planning committee is to grant recommendation subject to the conditions printed.
Okay, thank you, Darren. Mr. Pinkett.
I live at number 1, the Beaches, directly up next door to Paul and Emma, as you know. Various objections. I'm actually going to bear the brunt of this very large unsightly building. Projection of wall will without doubt obscure my natural kitchen light. It will enclose my patio also. It's extremely unsightly, as I'll be looking out at a big brick wall. The balcony will overlook my garden. And that's basically it, but I think that's quite enough. Okay, that's about all I've got to say, really. I think there's quite enough content there for my objections.
Okay, thank you. Are there any points of clarification? Councillor Lloyd to Mr. Pinkett, please.
Yeah, right, sir. You mentioned the balcony. I mean, just heard one of the officers say that the balcony had been removed.
Not moved again.
Sorry, will Is that acceptable to you? That's what I'm saying. Does that make a difference?
Yep. There were originally two balconies. Looking to the rear of the property, the left balcony, right-hand side of the rear, my house is right next to it, the balcony still exists.
Okay. Any other points of clarification? This system is a... Mr Sweeney.
We are deeply concerned about our loss of privacy. One of the main reasons we purchased the house, 29 Silver Birch Avenue, was because the garden wasn't overlooked. If the extension to the beaches were to go ahead, it would be bringing the windows and balcony a lot nearer to our house and would be directly overlooked, especially as our garden is lower than the number 2 Beaches property's garden. Another major concern is our 19-year-old daughter would be overlooked into her bedroom window. Being directly overlooked would also devalue our house. We spend a lot of time in our garden, especially enjoying the sun, and do not want the privacy to do so taken away from us. At present, our neighbour at number 27, Mr Shirley, who has raised his objections of the extension, is out of the country on holiday, so unable to speak here today. So with the effect of our gardens being lower and sloping downwards, and that of Mr Shirley's being even lower again from ours, which slopes further down, we would ask for another site visit again by the committee to actually see for yourselves our total loss of privacy and also to see how badly we would be overlooked. I was intending to send some photographs, but I believe a site visit would clarify the situation more clearly. And finally, I noticed on the notes I read tonight that similar applications were refused before in 2006. So please take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could knock your button off, please. No? Mr Jones.
Mr. Jones is happy for me to speak on his behalf. Andrew Taylor.
Right, so Mr Jones is not going to speak?
Correct.
No, okay.
Councillors, ladies and gentlemen, as agent I speak on behalf of my client and support the application. I wish to thank the officers for their diligence and the comments made together with the recommendation put forward before you. Just to try and clarify the issue with regard to the comments of balcony, the flat roofed balcony, which was to replace part of the rear pitched roof, has been removed, and the existing rear gabled pitched roof will be retained, and there will not be an external open balcony. I believe the other balcony which is referred to is a Juliet style balcony, which is on the back of the rear of the property where the rear extension will be constructed. I confirm that the extension is purely and simply at first floor. There are no ground floor extensions beyond the existing footprint. We have looked diligently and made sure that we fully comply with the authority's residential design guide. There are no habitable room windows to the side-facing walls, and the one window to the side is for the rear ensuite bedroom and has obscure glazing. The rear extension is totally clear of the 45-degree sight line from number 1, the Beaches, and I'll happily answer any questions that you may wish to put forward. But I would therefore ask that you accept your officer's recommendation and support the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Any? No? Darren, anything else on your report? No? In that case, to enable debate to take place, can I move the recommendation, which is to grant planning permission? Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Any member? Councillor Tony Lloyd.
So they're in a very confined area together, and the neighbours live very close together and whatever. And obviously there are two different periods in the interpretation of the objectives and the interpretation of what the balcony what is. I would like to move a site visit, Chair, so that we go and have a look to see what it's all about for ourselves on site and see what it means and what it does. Because it is a very confined place and they're all working together, and if we can, as a planning, can go out and have a look and come, yeah, I suppose it's like a peacemaker, but we're not our job, but to see the impact it would have on the neighbouring area and the neighbouring people and the environment, I asked for a site visit to let's go and have a look, see what the problems are and see if we can resolve them at the next planning meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Grant.
I'd make the exact same recommendation.
Does anybody else wish to speak before I move on to that? You happy that I take that as a...
Take it as number.
Yeah. Okay. It's been moved and seconded a site visit to establish the impact on the neighbouring properties. Body clear on that? Yeah? All those in favour of that? That's unanimous. Do I have to do a substantive motion bit?
Technically, yes, Chair.
Right, technically then, that becomes the substantive motion. Same thing, it's been moved and seconded that we do a site visit. All those in favour? Okay, that's unanimous, thank you. So in that case, we will hold a site visit prior to our next meeting. Officers will be in touch to explain the process at that time.
We'll just get cleared.
By all means, if there's any questions, get in touch with the planning department now. Okay, which takes us on to item number 6, 5 Hyde's Pastures.
This application...
Point of order, Chair. With your permission, Chair, I'd like to raise a point of order. Planning that such applications as this are not normally considered by the Planning Committee, only if they're reported or have to be because the property belongs to a councillor or a council employee. I'd just like to know why this one's before us, if that's the case. If that's a misunderstanding, then obviously officers can correct that.
Well, if it's in front of us, if somebody's giving you that advice, please raise it with me after the meeting or send me an email. Let me know who's giving you that advice. Certainly, we've had 3 applications, at least, I would imagine, of exactly the same nature. Not exactly, because everyone's different, but of the same site, the houses in that side. So I don't quite understand that advice you were given. But if you can let me know, Councillor Tromans, and I'll make sure that that's investigated. Darren, thank you.
This application is for the removal of one conifer and one group of conifers known as T2 and Group 3 of Tree Preservation Order 996 to be replaced in the next planting season with 3 new trees to consist of either yew trees at a minimum height of 1.8 metres or mountain ash or field maple at 14 centimetres girth. This is the location on the map of the location of the trees in orange. The trees can be seen here from the front of the house. The reason for removal of the trees are that it blocks out sunlight, shade reduces inability of plants and lawn to grow in half the garden, concern that the trees could damage drainage system of the trees, and that of the tree, and means that the plants and lawn will not grow in half the garden. And also there's concern with the impact that the roots may have on the drainage system of the house. This is from the rear of the properties with a group of trees. Planning guidance states that if any trees are removed under a tree preservation order, then these should be replaced. Furthermore, there have previously been approvals by committee at Two Hides pasture for the removal of trees covered under this order, provided they are replaced with new trees. It is considered that the replacement trees will provide a positive amenity to the area and provide a screen between the properties. Therefore, recommendation to committee is one of approval, subject to conditions printed in the report.
Okay, thank you. Mr Tilley. Oh, sorry, they kind of got it the wrong way. It should be the objector first. Mrs Marston.
I'm Sarah Marston. I live at 28 Regency Close, which on the previous diagram is the house at the end of the cul-de-sac. Back further. Yeah, so it's the one you can just see to the top right-hand corner. I have spoken, as Chair referred to, on a number of occasions previously with regard to this group of trees, which, despite being under a preservation order, have been subject to numerous requests to remove the trees, namely from the very first instance when the construction company of the estate requested removal before they built the properties. The trees themselves at that time were pruned and trimmed to a height of around 4 metres, and the girth was pruned in quite significantly as well. And shortly after that time, the properties were then built and subsequently sold. The purchasers of those properties were aware at the time that there was a tree preservation order in place, because that all became known to them obviously as part of the purchase process. The trees that have already been removed, down towards the bottom of the diagram, the latter two that were approved earlier this year have been removed over the last 2 weeks, and sadly we now have about a third of that line of trees completely decimated. The property at number 3, where there's the gap already seen on that diagram, where trees were requested to be replaced, have not been replaced, or have been replaced with trees which have not then bloomed or substantially grown to a position that they would replace what was previously there. So the boundary is significantly reduced. My main concern with these trees here is that they do actually stand adjacent to the end of the cul-de-sac, and therefore do provide the largest part of environmental noise, pollution barrier which we currently get from that line of trees. As I said, the previous applications to reduce the height and girth, I think, were a reasonable compromise. The impact, I think, of removing them will be detrimental, and my concern, as I stated in previous applications, which we are now seeing, is that we will just get more and more applications, and eventually the whole tree line will be gone. I would therefore ask that this application is not granted, and that consideration is perhaps given for a further application to retain the trees but reduce to a height of 4 metres, rather than replace with trees which we can clearly see from previous applications are not in any way replacing the current tree boundary line. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Are there any... No? Mr Tilley.
Thank you. I've only got a few points because most of it is summarised in the document. Like I say, it's just really in relation to the neighbours' responses and the objections that have been raised mainly. Firstly, in relation to the saying that reduce air pollution, well, most studies these days that I've read seem to suggest that it's hedgerows that are the main pollution barrier these days to air pollution rather than trees themselves, but we fully intend to comply with your officer's recommendations that we replace them with trees. We've got no intention of getting rid of trees without planting them back. I appreciate other neighbours may not have done that, but we fully intend to comply with that and put new trees in there. In relation to there being, again, a wildlife barrier, again, that's why we're putting new trees back in. I don't want to look at other houses over the other side of the waterway any more than the objector wants to look at the back of my house, and I understand why she puts in that objection. But I think that's the reason why that's the objection. But we intend to put trees back in there to act as a barrier itself. As a barrier itself, the way the houses are built along there, the houses are actually a barrier themselves without the trees, but we plan to put them back. In relation to them, the value of the trees, I mean, they're not native coniferous trees anyway, so they have limited preservation value. In relation to wildlife, there is a couple of animals. We do have a couple of birds nesting in them, but they're only pigeons. There's nothing else nesting in those trees. Again, people purchase the properties knowing the tree preservation order was there in place. That is true. But before I purchased the property, I made contact with the planning department, who informed me that the application to have the trees in my garden had already been granted. However, because the person chose to sell the house instead, the trees were never removed. Which is why, and then it lapsed, which is why a new application would need to be submitted, hence why we bought the house and another application has been submitted. It's just that, again, it's the light problem. Back of our house, we have to have the lights on 90% of the time of the day because there's just so much light is cut out by those trees. Half the garden doesn't grow because of the tree cover. The grass doesn't want to grow, which is why. And again, like I said, the Parks Department, they've said they've got no objections to the removal, as long as trees are being replaced, which is what we fully intend to do.
Okay, done.
That's about it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Grant.
Objector said that some new trees were planted which didn't take. Are you able to assess this to see if this is true and if, additional replacement trees can be put in if they didn't?
Property, they're on somebody else's. I think they're a couple of houses down. But if they have, the orders clearly states in that if your trees die and they don't come, you've got to replace them, which I will fully comply with. And in relation to the other one, they've only just been removed a few weeks ago at number 2. When I was speaking to that neighbour the other day, and he's obviously already looking at purchasing them ready to be planted.
About whether things have been done right or wrong, and I'll be passing that on to the planning department as well for them to have a look at. Are there any points of clarification? No? Darren, anything else? No? In that case then, to enable debate to take place, can I move the recommendation, which is to grant planning permission subject to the planting of replacement trees as per the application description? Is that seconded? Any member? Councillor Bomber.
Instead, and looked at the diagrams, I don't think it's clear from the information we're given that there is quite a long belt of trees to the rear of all these properties onto the flood relief channel which separates the two neighbours here today. And that these 4 trees, I think there is that in total that we're talking about, are actually 4 of, I'd say, approximately 24. There's trees along the whole of all those houses in that part of that little estate. And I think perhaps one of the other confusing things that's been mentioned is that to form a barrier, we gave permission some time back for a supermarket to be built this side of the houses. Perhaps that's the barrier that's required, and perhaps the houses do provide that barrier, but the trees are just one of a whole group. And I do agree to a certain extent, and I think they should be managed. I'm a bit puzzled in some ways that trees to replace them, a yew tree, a mountain ash and a feed maple, they're all totally different types of trees. But in fact a yew tree would be very similar to the, I think they're Leylandis that are there at the moment, or some similar type of evergreen. So I'm a bit surprised that there was, it's been suggested that a yew tree, an evergreen tree replaces another evergreen tree, because it might take a bit longer to grow, but you'll have a similar problem in the future. But I agree, I think that these trees should be managed better, and I think when they were there on the original commercial site before it was made housing, they were managed in height and width, and that seems to me, if that was ever to be a future proposal, if this doesn't get by today, that we back that one instead. But Yeah, I'm against the idea of removing these trees because they're only part of a continual bank of trees. Thank you.
Councillor Ian Lloyd.
Just to know which officer, but I remember going on the site visit here many, many years ago, and the debate that took place over the trees. You know, I remember it vividly, and the reason why we put the tree preservation orders on. It was to protect them. What does concern me is it's been stated that some of the trees have died. Will we be tying up with the relevant properties to make sure those trees are put back in? Will that be done through the parks enforcement?
But some of the trees are not in good health and have died for the ones that should have been replaced. I have written that down, I have got that information, we will take it back and we will then deal with that and make sure that those trees are replaced. The trees that are replacement trees as part of the preservation order also automatically become preserved trees as well. So there is a duty to make sure that they are at least in situ. So I've written that down, I will get that looked at.
Yeah. In any event, regardless of what the decision is here, those things will be looked at. Any other member? No? In that case, it's been moved and seconded the recommendation to grant planning permission. All those in favour? 10. Yeah. All right. Oh, sorry, Rob. Against? Abstentions? I think it was 10, the original one. Okay, so that's approved. Can I thank you very much for your patience, and to members, and we don't have any other business, and declare the meeting closed. Thank you.